Hello and welcome to Newswire. I'm Ayza Omar. Now, after Pakistan released the Indian Air Force pilot, Wing Commander Abhinandan, one would think escalation between the two nuclear-armed states would come to a halt, if not simmer down. Meanwhile, countries around the world have acknowledged and showed support to Prime Minister Imran Khan's move to release the pilot, who ejected safely and landed in Azad Kashmir after his Indian fighter jet entered into Pakistan airspace illegally and was consequently shot down. Prime Minister Theresa May, in a telephone conversation, praised Prime Minister Imran Khan for his peace gesture and invited him to visit the UK. Prime Minister May has urged India and Pakistan to de-escalate tensions like many other world leaders who have shown a lot of concern as tensions simmered between the two. The OIC summit, where India's External Affairs Minister was invited, also passed two resolutions which favour Pakistan's stance for peace and de-escalation. In another development, the Samjhota Express train service between India and Pakistan has also resumed operations. The cross-border train service was suspended last Thursday after tensions went through the roof following India's violation of Pakistan's airspace. But in all of this, the one victim that remains completely tortured through all these negotiations or the lack thereof are the Kashmiris. They are still the biggest victims, and there in Kashmir, the blood continues to flow unabated. Now, we will be speaking to our guests to try and understand what exactly they see happened in the past weeks and what is the way forward, especially for the sake of those who are being hurt the most in this conflict. And with that, I'd like to welcome our guests. Right now, we have Mr. Rifat Jawaid. He's a journalist. You are talking to us from Delhi. Welcome to Newswire.
Thank you.
And also on the line, we have Mr. Shah Faesal. He's a former IAS officer. You're joining us from Srinagar. Welcome to Newswire.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Shah Faesal, I would like to start with you. Just trying to begin the show with a concise understanding of what, in your view, has happened in the past 2 weeks between India and Pakistan.
Past 2 weeks have been a terrible time for the subcontinent, and particularly for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It has been a very, very scary time. We people here, more so the people on the LOC, have been really anticipating a nuclear escalation. We were panic buying items for next 2 months. We were preparing for the medicines to be bought for our care, for our patients, and baby food for our children. It has been a very, very terrible time. We have memories of war in the past. Our earlier generations have faced that. But this is something which we had not expected, that this would escalate in such a quick manner. But then we saw suddenly then some thaw happened between the two countries, and some ray of hope returned to us, and the war got averted. But it has definitely been a very, very stressful time for Kashmiris and people living on the LOC.
So, it's been a stressful time indeed. Mr. Rifat, let me bring you into this conversation, especially in light of how it was covered in India by the media there, as well as if you could shed some light on how social media covered these past 2 weeks, in your opinion.
So the focus has shifted to, how many people did Indian airstrikes manage to kill, in Balakot. And that's been dominating the conversation for the last 2-3 days. What has actually compounded the whole, sort of intensified the whole debate was the statement by the ruling party, BJP's President Amit Shah, who in a rally yesterday said that Indian Air Force had killed 300 people. Now, that has been contradicted by Indian Air Force Chief today, who said that we are not in a position to give you the numbers. So that has kind of like, it's as if like, leaving the Amit Shah, the BJP president, red-faced. And that's pretty much what his deputy, Air Vice Marshal Kapoor, had said a few days ago. So that's been kind of dominating it. Meanwhile, the ruling party, which is the BJP and Prime Minister Modi, have missed no opportunity to politicize, the tension between India and Pakistan. And we are going to see more and more of that, as the date for the Lok Sabha elections near.
Right. And Mr. Shah Faesal, just trying to extrapolate this conversation more about how media coverage takes place and how, in effect, it also turns into a campaign, whether for a government or against a government. The BJP is campaigning for general elections coming ahead. How much of this event do you feel was politicized for electoral gains?
I think this would have been one of those wars which actually began in the newsrooms and then was, executed by the war rooms. The way media has been handling the war situation for last fortnight, it has been very, very irresponsible. And there have been voices within India as well who have categorically criticized the conduct of the media, particularly a few of the TV channels in Delhi in last fortnight. And that did give us an impression that everything was being done for the electoral gains. And but now that the situation has de-escalated to an extent, although there is some shelling still happening on the borders and some killings were reported a couple of days back, we just hope that some good sense can prevail on the media and media can start behaving responsibly in coming days.
Right. And also, Mr. Faesal, there's also a lot of heat that individuals receive and have been receiving, whether they're politicians or they are independent journalists, for criticizing Prime Minister Modi's actions in these past 2 weeks, especially, and calling them pro-Pakistani. I believe you also faced a lot of criticism like this recently over something you said.
Absolutely. I think one of the worst things that's happening these days is that only warmongering is something which is seen to be logical. Everything else comes as a contortion. Everything else is being treated as false and stupid and maybe anti-national. So maybe when I also reciprocated to a certain gesture, that this gesture is very important and peace is very important for the region, there were definitely voices which pushed back and said that, no, come on, this sounds very anti-national. It's very unfortunate that these days, in a time of very exclusionary, very jingoistic nationalism, any voice which stands for peace, which stands for reconciliation, which stands for abandoning the historical rivalries between India and Pakistan, those voices are categorically rejected and rubbished, and kind of people are made personal attacks against. But I think these voices will continue to persist. I'm happy that there was a lot of support in spite of the criticism from both the sides. And I'm absolutely having no regrets about what I said.
No, so specifically, just talking about what was that particular comment, I was hoping you would speak about that as well. You tweeted that Prime Minister Imran Khan deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for this peace gesture and continuing efforts with India on peace talks. Could you talk a little more about that? I believe you got a lot of flack from Indian journalists who spoke to you about this. What was their criticism?
Prime Minister Imran Khan did make a very critical and a very important gesture by releasing Wing Commander Abhinandan. And I believe that gesture was the critical point at which it seemed to us that the war is being averted. And that gesture has to be reciprocated. I mean, I'm not somebody who believes in playing by the way historically India-Pakistan rivalries have happened and the kind of jingoism which we keep on seeing between these two countries. My belief is that there is still space for a lot of humanity to nurture between these two countries, and any goodwill gesture which has been made by the Prime Minister Imran Khan, that gesture needs to be reciprocated. And when there was a demand for giving Nobel Prize to Imran Khan, I said nothing more than this Wing Commander Abhinandan's life. He's somebody who has made the country proud, and if Imran Khan returns this guy to us, this guy to our country, I think this is something which needs to be reciprocated, and not just one Nobel Prize. I said give 2 Nobel Prizes to Prime Minister for standing up and making this peace gesture.
So, right, Mr. Rifat, Pakistan in just the past 4 years has released around about 1,500 prisoners of India. In the reciprocal sort of response to that was that number is something around 328 that India released, Pakistanis. Now, how do you see it? This gesture, was this a peace gesture, or in your opinion, this was something that was blown out of proportion as is covered by Indian media?
Look, I mean, in Imran Khan, I see somebody with whom India can have, meaningful dialogue. I mean, among all the prime ministers that I have seen, I think this guy genuinely gives me hope. When I watched his nation to the address, and I thought like he meant every word of it. So I think this is the best opportunity for India to initiate or engage in, into a peaceful dialogue. But having said that, I'm not very optimistic, purely given the fact that India is going to elections, and having a peaceful talks with Pakistan or peace talks with Pakistan is not going to help the ruling party in this electoral battle, because as I said to your colleague in one of the earlier programs, that this government has failed on all the promises that it had made in 2014. So creating this jingoism around fake nationalism does help it, divert the whole attention, from other issues. So that's why I'm not very hopeful about Modi government taking any meaningful initiative between now until May, when we will have some kind of government, either by BJP parties.
So, Mr. Rifat, just moving on from that as well, now that across the board, there is the understanding that this comes at a time when election campaigning is underway and general elections are a few months away. Has this in any way worked in favor for Prime Minister Modi in the upcoming elections, or has this backfired totally?
So the day the Indian airstrikes happened, I was almost convinced that this is game over and Modi is going to be re-elected. However, a couple of days later, when MiG-21 was down in Pakistani territory and Wing Commander Abhinandan was captured, it changed the entire equation. It had quite an adverse impact on Modi's chances. What was left was completed by Imran Khan's extraordinary gesture, by stunning everybody in India, when he announced in the joint session of the parliament that he's releasing Wing Commander Abhinandan. That has turned the table against BJP. Now the BJP, that's why BJP is now creating, the numbers, the 300 terrorists we killed. Although, none of its senior Indian Air Force officials have been able to back that claim. So, it is desperate to keep the issue alive. But I think, the gesture by Imran Khan has really not helped their cause, if they're hoping to use it in the coming elections.
And while we're still trying to hash out what could be the agenda, it is very hard to wrap your head around that someone would do this for the sake of securing power again in elections, because this seems like it was not very well thought of. And here I would like to ask you about how you took the fact that there was no photographical or any other kind of evidence available of the Balakot madrasas that India alleged to have attacked.
So that's where the Modi government is finding itself, on a sticky wicket. Even the channels, which had supported the narrative that the Indian airstrikes had managed to kill 300 people, soon kind of started questioning the central government. There is a sense that while Pakistan was able to produce an evidence of downing the MiG-21 and capturing Wing Commander Abhinandan, India hasn't been able to substantiate its claims of killing 300 terrorists in Balakot. So that's where the advantage has gone in favor of Imran Khan. You summed it up rightly. You chose the word rightly, that it was miscalculation, on the part of Modi government. It had thought that, the message that we managed to cross the LOC and went into Pakistani airspace will be quite strong, and he will be able to project himself as a very decisive leader. However, what followed a day later completely changed the whole narrative, and that's why the government is finding it very, very difficult. Although the media is desperate, to push that pro-government narrative, purely because I don't know how much you are aware about Indian media's functioning, but election season, there's a lot of funding that comes from political parties through advertisement, and nobody wants to miss their share of pie.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Rifat Jawaid, for your valuable time and input there to Newswire. Coming back to you quickly, Shah Faesal, something that he said, and I want to bring in the video and the alleged cuts that were made to sort of take away the graceful interaction between a captor and his captive. I'm talking about Wing Commander Abhinandan when he was with under the Pakistan military's sort of with them, and he was sipping tea, and this video was made where he's having a conversation, and it was covered in India media. There was a lot of outrage this video was shot under duress. It was literally hashed to pieces. Like this one, it was taken out of context. So, is this the sort of narrative, do you think, that Mr. Rifat was talking about, that the media is desperate to try and support the Indian government where they don't have much left to stand on?
There will always be attempts to ruin the beauty of the goodwill gestures in a time when warmongering and violence is the only way of jingoism is the only way of getting TRPs. So I do have I'm not surprised at all that the way the video was interpreted, although it did seem initially as a matter of concern that why was there a need to have that video in the first place. But then at the same time, I believe that nothing should undermine the beauty of that gesture which has been made. And it's very important that people on this side of the border, they acknowledge the goodwill gesture that has been made, and it is duly reciprocated. And in coming days, we see some kind of thaw and warming up happening between these two countries.
There was also a report that was done extensively by Reuters talking about the alleged suicide bomber that was behind the Pulwama attack, and consequently found that he was badly abused by Indian occupying forces there in Kashmir, in Indian occupied Kashmir. You live and work in Srinagar. Can you give us an idea of what life is like for the locals there? How much of it, of a daily routine, is overshadowed by a sense of fear?
Kashmir is a conflict zone where you have two sets of combatants. They are dealing with regular and daily combat. We have daily killings of people from on the both sides of the ideological divide. It has, for the last 30 years, we have seen extensive militarization of the civilian spaces. We have seen in recent times choking of political spaces as well. Democratic spaces have gone they have been shrinking. So definitely the life of a common ordinary Kashmiri is not the way it deserves to be. But having said that, it's important that these two countries come together and they talk about resolution of the Kashmir problem. If we want to see lasting, non-violent kind of political rights movement getting nurtured here in Kashmir, it's important that these two countries talk to each other, the negotiations and peace dialogue resumes, so that there is some kind of relief to Kashmiris amidst of all this. It's important that India takes responsibility for what is India's responsibility, but then it's also at the same time important that Pakistan also reciprocates at those times whenever India makes those gestures, and India also reciprocates when Pakistan makes those gestures.
But I'm curious
life
to
is
know.
literally hell here.
No, I'm curious to know. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but when you say, first of all, I was going to ask you what in your mind is, besides just peace talks, what is it that what is the resolution or the conflict's resolution that they should be working towards? Clearly, both of them don't agree on each other's stance. And secondly, when you say that whenever India does forward that gesture, Pakistan should reciprocate, it makes me wonder how you saw all the attempts made by Pakistan to bring India to the negotiating table over Kashmir prior to even this 14th February Pulwama attack.
Absolutely. So, when I talk about political dispute, it's about something which has been going on here since 1947. These two countries have already engaged into 3 wars over Kashmir. We have seen worse situations in the past. So there is nothing, it's nothing like something that needs to be retold that what's the problem in Kashmir. These two countries have a problem with each other when it comes to the territoriality of the dispute, when it comes to the constitutionality of the dispute, when it comes to the history and context of the dispute. That's something which I leave for the two countries to sort out. But my point is that when you talk about the initiatives which have been made in the past, when we here in Delhi, when we talk about initiatives made by India and we tell them that it's important for India to talk to Pakistan, then India says, oh, but then we try to talk during Atal Bihari Vajpayee's time, but then the parliament attack happened. Then we try to talk about recent times, then the Pathankot attack happened. India and Pakistan need to figure out, why are these attacks happening? Who's doing these attacks? Is there credible evidence? Can these two countries work together and share the evidence and investigate together these incidents which have been happening? Because Pakistan, we understand, is in itself a victim of terrorism, and there are a lot of suicide bombings happening on the soil of Pakistan also. We have not forgotten the Peshawar school attack. It's one of the most horrendous things that we have witnessed in the past. The recent attack on Pulwama, that has been one of the most horrendous experiences that have happened. My belief is that these two countries need to share together, need to work together, because finally, if we talk about the future of South Asia, it's only safe if India and Pakistan come together and work for the mutual interest. And the mutual interest is about, trade, about talks, about non-violence, about counterterrorism, about having a peace dialogue between these two nations, and obviously about resolution of the Kashmir problem.
And very quickly, just the last point here, you said that both should reciprocate each other's efforts and gestures to peace. Right now, we are witnessing, the world over is witnessing Pakistan continuously, despite the violation of its airspace, sort of offering a olive branch to India, but we're seeing no response. What is the reason behind this? Is this something that we can expect after the elections are over to get some positive, or is this pretty much the trend?
It's our bad luck that we are in midst of elections, and it's very hard for transitional governments to kind of engage into policy decisions and take long-term decisions or a long-term view of the things. Unfortunately, this olive branch came at a time when maybe this side is not ready to reciprocate it. I can just hope that sooner, once the elections finish, any other initiatives from Imran Khan, because we believe Imran Khan is a very well-intentioned person and he believes in what he says, and we have been listening to his speech, and we believe he does offer a lot of hope to people, the right-thinking people on this side of the border. And I'm very hopeful that once the elections are over, his gestures of peace and negotiation and reconciliation are going to be reciprocated.
But anyway, that's all the time we have for this segment. Don't go away. We're going to take a quick short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Newswire here. I'd like to welcome Mr. General Amir Khalid Lodhi, who's joining us on Newswire. Welcome to the show. What the media has missed in their analysis and critiques across the world is that this is not just elections. This is something to crush the indigenous movement in Kashmir.
Of course, then comes the election, and then I'm going to give you the reason, according to my perception. The reason is that Indians, they had invested a lot as far as their political investment is concerned in Afghanistan. And they were quite certain that whatever outcomes, whatever is the outcome of a war, they will have a major role in that. But the moment US decided to exit Afghanistan, again, Pakistan became more prominent because we were helping them negotiating with Taliban and everything. So that was again a great setback for them, that they had carved out a vast space in Afghanistan for them, for their intelligence agencies. They were also operating against Pakistan from the Afghan side. So that was another setback.
Okay. So hold that thought, General. Let me come back to you. Ms. Naeema, let me ask you, do you agree with the idea that the intention behind what we have seen in the past 2 weeks, the intention behind the Modi government's post-Pulwama attack narrative of anti-Pakistan and then the incursions was also to kill the Kashmiri spirit?
Well, partly I can agree with that, but you have seen for the last 3 decades, they've been trying to break the spirit of Kashmiris, but they didn't succeed. Nobody succeeded in that. We've been fighting for our right cause. And yes, this was a little bit of a surprise for all of us, that Indian Army, Indian Air Force entering into the Pakistan, and that too in the Pakistan, not in Azad Kashmir, but in the other territory, which is totally Pakistan's territory, not a LOC. That was a little bit of demoralizing effect for the Kashmir. But after that, what happened after these attacks, I think the reply was given by Pakistani side. And then what happened, that's for all of us. But I think, the India-Pakistan is trying to settle their own scores, but it's all being fought along the LOC now. I mean, for the last few days, you've been seeing so many civilian casualties across the border. Kashmiris are, suffering a lot this time. Maybe, no doubt, they are suffering for a lot of time, but this escalation has made their lives more worse now. Because if there are going on these the blames and counter blames from both sides,
Right.
that what India did and what Pakistan has done in retaliation, that's not helping Kashmir. I'm sorry to say.
No, that's not
That's
definitely
making
not.
us like.
That's definitely not helping Kashmir, because what we're seeing, while even if tensions are increasing between Pakistan and India, what we're seeing is that the death toll in Kashmir is going through the roof. There are again reports of 6 people dead in various incidents in Indian-occupied Kashmir. So it really doesn't help the narrative. So what does? How do we bring international community's attention to those who are actually the ones who are suffering the most from this?
I mean, you have seen everybody was talking de-escalation, de-escalation. Yes, you have to talk about the de-escalation and you have to work for the de-escalation. But what about Kashmiris? What about the Kashmir issue, the core issue, which is between these two countries? If your prime minister has given an offer to talk about Kashmir, I think we were expecting that Indian government will give a positive reply to this, and maybe then international community will not be involved. But I think this time, now international community has to be serious about this thing, because it's killing Kashmiris, it is humiliating Kashmiris, it's making Kashmiris' life hell every day. So international community at this stage will have to come forward and help Kashmiris to come out of this rut, so that we don't have to suffer. And if then India and Pakistan, they have to sit together, and then they have to involve Kashmiris as well. It's not only between two countries, as you were, one of the analysts was saying, that it is a bilateral issue. Kashmiris are a part and parcel of this issue. Then you need to have a Kashmiri leadership to discuss this issue and then sit together. And if you need, then you have to, this time you have to do a lot of lobbying to involve international community, so that the Kashmir will get out of this situation, which has been killing Kashmir for the last 7 decades.
Right. General, coming to you very quickly, there also the narrative that Prime Minister Modi faces a lot of corruption charges, especially in case of those jets that he wanted to buy from France, and how he had promoted one particular company in India to come into a dealership with them. Is that also the kind of thing that this event has distracted the voters of India from when we talk about Prime Minister Modi?
You see, my own take is, and I don't insist on that, countries do not go to war. Even the topmost, most powerful political entities cannot take countries to war on some personal corruption things, or to cover up such like things. Normally, I'm speaking. It may happen in this particular case. But he mentioned for example, he said that if we had these Rafale jets, we would have done better against Pakistan. I think this was just a very lame excuse, because the matter of fact is that they have Mirage 2000 jets, which are state-of-the-art modern jets. They have Su-30, which is the top-of-the-line Russian jet. So saying that because Rafale is not there, so we could not give them a good reply, I think is just.
It also gives them a kind of impetus, if one was to think about the allegations against Modi for awarding the contract to a prominent businessman close to him. It also gives them the impetus to go ahead for the purchase of this deal, which came basically to a halt because of investigations over allegations of corruption.
That way, you can say that he killed two birds with a stone. One, that he diverted, the allegations which were on him as far as corruption in the Rafale contract is concerned. And secondly, yes, the Rafale jets can come a little earlier than the normal timeline. Good for the Air Force. But induction of plane takes some time. So in any ongoing war, of course, if new planes come, they do give an impetus, but not necessarily that they will make a big difference as far as their power potential is concerned. They are already, their Air Force is 4 to 5 times in numbers. And even in the high-tech jets, I've named, two Mirage 2000 and Su-30. They also have Jaguar. So they already have that edge. The main thing which they need to understand is it is the man behind the gun. Our soldiers, our airmen, our pilots, our officers are battle-hardened. They are trained, and on top of it, they fight through special Islamic way virtues. So they think that dying is shahadat. So that is the main difference, which they are not understanding.
Right.
I think numerically we'll never be able to catch up with them.
Right.
But our potential will always remain greater than them, inshallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that of yours, Mr. General Khalid. Coming back to you, Ms. Naeema, right now the situation is, as we both understand it, India will now try to do diplomatically what it couldn't do militarily. And this is obviously going to include reaching out to the UN General Assembly, to reach out to their allies around the world, to try and put pressure onto Pakistan in addressing the Jaish-e-Mohammed issue. Now, again, it takes away, do you feel or do you agree that the ongoing indigenous revolt that is taking place in Indian-occupied Kashmir, the massive violations of human rights that are taking place, which is rape and killing of children with pellet guns, blinding and maiming so many for life, in an area which is occupied by almost 1 million Indian troops? When does this issue become something in the forefront, especially in light of what is happening right now?
The question which you are asking me is that there are two things which United Nations or the international community needs to do. One, they have to send some observation, fact-finding mission to Kashmir and find out there what is happening on the ground, what's happening with the people, with the women, with children, with the youth, and how they are suffering, the first thing. And the second thing is that if United Nations or the international community is interested in de-escalating this tension between India and Pakistan for a long time, then they need to come and find the solution for the Kashmir, make both the countries to sit together and find some sort of a solution that will be acceptable to both of them and mostly acceptable to Kashmir. Maybe the Indian lobby and then the Pakistani lobby, this will be going on for a long time, and then there will be a lull again. And again, you have seen the trend in this for the last 7 decades. It's again going, then the war.
I just want to quickly, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to quickly add that the suggestion you made that until foreign neutral objective bodies come to observe, I mean, I want to refer to the July 2018 UN Commission report that essentially highlighted the situation not just in Indian-occupied Kashmir, but also Pakistan's side of Kashmir. And it was a very damning report for the Indians because it highlighted and proved how the scale of atrocities that take place, but India completely refused it. And also there's the issue of allowing third parties to be allowed within Indian-occupied Kashmir to visit the area and observe it and collect concrete evidence of what's happening on the ground.
Yeah, then this report has come, and it was for the first time this report, which has worked on the ground, and it has come and it has given the real picture of the Jammu and Kashmir.
Right, just reflecting back on the events that have led to the situation today, there is a lot of controversy around the attacks having taken place in Balakot in the first place by Indian jets, that terrorists were targeted. Now, when there is a lack of evidence that is not being given from Indian side, in fact, there was a delay in response on that day also, how do you make of it? What does it come across to you?
To be honest with you, Ayza, we don't care about who killed whom, whether it was Jaish militants, whether it was Indian Air Force and what is happening there. Because if you see the condition on the LOC from both sides, we are concerned about that. Because yes, you are making claims and counter-claims, and Indian government says it killed 300, 400 Jaish militants. We don't know who are Jaish militants. Our movement is an indigenous movement, and we are fighting. We were fighting a peaceful struggle for our rights. Yes, there are
Naeema, I'm sorry, I have to ask you to hold that thought. I'd like to welcome Air Marshal Masood Akhtar, who's just joined Newswire. Seeing the situation between India and Pakistan right now, the lack of evidence that New Delhi has shown in terms of the jets having dropped bombs in alleged terrorist madrasas, what does this translate to you in a diplomatic language between the two?
It simply means that they have not escalated the situation, but they are not de-escalating by any means. I think the air chief spoke on a forward area base today, and he said in Urdu, "Abhi bhi halat bahut mushkil hain, khatam nahi hue," meaning thereby that we cannot lower our guards. They may not have hit targets, but they proved a point. We have proved a point. I think the powers that be mediated and said de-escalate, de-escalate. We are ready to do that. They are not ready to do that.
But do you think that when in another instant, just after the release of this Wing Commander Abhinandan, the Indian pilot, what we heard Prime Minister Modi commenting on that this is just the beginning, is what he implied. There is more to come, as if to imply that tensions are not at all over. What does that mean when on one side Pakistan continues to make peace overtures to India?
More than likely, it may not be a military escalation. So they may keep the forces where they are on the alert till the elections take place. The opposition is calling wolf, and they say that, look, you are using this for political purposes. Modi says, so be it, because he thinks that he can win elections with the help of these. At the same time, let's face it, India is a big country with big military. They have hubris, they have arrogance. And they have shown it in the past, they are showing it today. So even if the international powers come and say that de-escalate, see, they have already told Russia to stay off. They have told the Saudi ambassador, Saudi foreign minister not to come and not to. If today also they think they can get away with this, despite the fact that Modi says, look, we didn't have Rafales, but he's trying to score a brownie point against the opposition. Because let's face it, at that time, yes, we have shot 2 aeroplanes. Yes, we have successfully engaged 6 targets. But it's a professional Indian Air Force. Let's not underestimate them. But I think it's a lull. It may not be a lull before a military storm, but the political storm will continue. They will continue to talk like this brazenly. But there may not be military operation. By no means we can lower our guards, and we will continue to be on the edge all the time.
Right. Thank you so much, Air Marshal Masood there with us. Coming back to you, Ms. Naeema, and since we're just wrapping up, we're running out of time to understand again what you were saying in terms of the perception in Kashmir is that the Kashmiris don't care what happens between Pakistan and India. Is that where you were going on with that?
Yeah, because what's going between two countries, we don't care. We care about the bodies which we have to raise every day. We have to raise coffins. Our youth is dying. They're being killed. We are concerned about that. We are concerned about the LOC, where you have seen last day, 5 bodies were there, civilian bodies. There are so many civilian casualties happening every day. We are concerned with that. And we are asking international community to come and save us, because if you have to de-escalate the situation, you have to resolve the Kashmir issue so that we will also have a sigh of relief and we can also say that we can live. Otherwise, we are not living. We are dying every day, which international community needs to see.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nayeema Mahjoor, joining us there from London. And with that, we've come to the end of the show. We will see you tomorrow in a new episode of Newswire and bring you updates of news in the bulletins ahead. Goodbye.